She's been on the job for only a month, and already NYPD Assistant Chief Judith Harrison has been put to the test as the commanding officer of the Brooklyn North Precinct.
And I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the position of
Assistant Chief
in the New York City Police Department.
in the New York City Police Department.
According to the best of my ability.
According to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Judy.
Ever since Chief Harrison took that oath of office, gun violence in Brooklyn exploded, claiming the lives of dozens of people, including that 1.5-year-old DeVell Gardner Jr. Chief Harrison joining me live this morning to discuss her first 30 days on the job. So good morning to you, Ms. Harrison. How you doing?
Good morning. Thank you for having me on your show, Mr. Manarino.
Of course, this is a big moment in history for the NYPD. Only 1 in 4 women have risen the ranks. Your picture now on the wall, right?
Yes, the picture's on the wall, sir.
That is good to hear. So before we get into specifically Brooklyn North, I want to get your take this morning on some video that's making the headlines. A protester pulled off the street into an unmarked van. You know, videos like this seem to fuel some of that anger against police. I'm not going to ask specifically your thoughts about the video, but what's your reaction overall when you look at it?
So I saw the video, and I don't necessarily think a little snippet of the video tells a whole story, but I do know that the young lady was wanted for several incidents of criminal mischief to department property, specifically to department cameras, and she was actively being sought after by the warrant squad that falls under the Detective Bureau, and they saw her and then they apprehended her.
But with the level, I think what people are scrutinizing on social media, and you're right about the snippets of video, because we've talked about this in the past, that you don't get the whole context, is the level of force that seems to be used in this unmarked van, yanking her in. Was that level of force necessary for the crime?
Well, what I'll say is that there's an active investigation. It's currently being investigated by the chief of detectives. I have full confidence in him, and he will take a look at what happened and make a determination as to whether or not it was lawful and whether or not there needs to be any type of disciplinary action.
Understood. You know, and this brings me to where you oversee now, Brooklyn North. You know, it's been marred by violent clashes with police, Black Lives Matter protesters. What message do you want to send to demonstrators and to your own officers at the same time when they're confronted with these kinds of situations?
Well, the message I want to say to demonstrators is that we hear you. We know that protests have historically been the vehicle that has driven change and reforms. We will protect your constitutional rights to protest, but we want you to protest peacefully. We will not condone violence, not violence on behalf of any members of the community or violence by the police department either. So we hear you. We want to work with you. We want to get better. And my message to my officers is that I want them to be safe.
Uh-oh. All right, we're going to try to get Judy Harrison back there. I think we're having some problems, technical difficulties with her shot. But we have a lot more to talk to her. We have her back? All right, Chief, there you are. Your message to your officers, but you got cut off right as you were saying it.
Well, my message to my officers is that I want them to police with integrity, but I also want to make sure that they're safe as well.
Understood. So this has been a lot to take in over the past 30 days. If you could describe, and this might be tough, your first month on the job as the commanding officer in Brooklyn North in one word, what would it be and why?
One word? That's tough, Mr. Manarino, but I'll say eventful, very eventful, very busy. I've hit the ground running. I've gone to numerous community events. We had 3 food drives. I've gone to town halls, Zoom meetings, in-person meetings. I've visited churches, visiting key members of the community, obviously meeting with my staff, the men and women that I'm now working with. So we've been hitting the ground running.
Eventful indeed. And you know, we had a real tragic incident that you were front and center. You went and visited the family of DeVell Gardner Jr., laid to rest on Monday. You know, when a tragedy like this happens, how do you respond when there's so much emotion in the community?
Very tough situation. I had worked that Sunday that he was killed. I got the phone call that we had 4 people shot. I immediately got up and got dressed and went back into work. We had 4 people shot, 4 victims at 4 different hospitals. I went to Maimonides because that's where baby Gardner was, and I was there with his parents, supporting them through this horrible tragedy, and just letting them know that the New York City Police Department is here for them, and that we will leave no stone unturned when it comes to finding out the people that are responsible for this heinous act.
You know, and this is attributed to gun violence, which we have seen growing specifically in some of the precincts that you are now overseeing. What do you attribute some of this gun violence, this spike in the violence, to?
Well, certainly we're seeing a lot of gun violence related to gang issues, gang and crew issues. And I think that just on the heels of the pandemic, I think that some changes to the criminal justice system and bail reform, I think it's just a myriad of issues that are contributing to this. But I will tell you this, the men and women that I work with, they're hardworking men and women, and they really want to see this city turn around and get back to where we know we can be again.
And I hear exactly what you're saying, and a big part of that is trust, right? Trust between you and trust between the community. How do you begin to restore that trust that was lost in these communities?
Communication. Very hard and honest conversations, just letting the community know that we're here for them. We understand that we work for them and we want to work for them to the best of our abilities, and that we want to work hard for them, that we want the same things. We want communities to be safe. We want communities to be very safe where, you know, a 1-year-old can sit outside with his parents and not get shot. So it's a lot of communication.
Yeah, it was really tough to see that, Coffin. You know, I think you bring a perspective to this that is very unique, because you grew up in Queens, you still live there. So how does growing up in New York City, how does that affect you in terms of getting that communication to the communities that you live in, that you're now serving?
Well, I'm New York City, born and raised. Yes, I live in Queens, but I have roots in Brooklyn. My grandparents lived in Brooklyn for many years. My mom and her brother, my uncle, were born in Brooklyn. My uncle actually had a funeral home on the corner of Gates and Patchen. My mom, I speak about my mom often because she's such an influential person in my life, and made numerous sacrifices, and I just can't speak enough about her. But she worked at the 83rd Precinct. My father was a bus driver. He worked in Brooklyn. So I have Brooklyn roots, and I'm a New York City girl. I care about the city. I live in the city. I'm sworn to protect and serve the city, and I do that to the best of my ability every day.
And you know, you're taking over for Chief Madry, who we had here on this show, and he passed that baton on to you. You are making history, like we alluded to in the very beginning of this, as the first female commanding officer and only the 4th black female to be promoted to an assistant chief. So my question to you is, have you ever faced discrimination within the department? And what do you tell the young women who are now looking up to you saying, okay, I can do this, I can accomplish this?
I've faced some challenges. I won't say that I won't, but I don't dwell on those challenges. What I dwell on is the fact that I've been supported, I've been nurtured, and I've been given opportunities to excel, and that's really what I focus on. And my thing is, you know, being the 4th woman to ascend to the rank of assistant chief in the New York City Police Department, it is historic. And I think what I want to do is make sure that more women come behind me and have roles such as this.
And lastly, you know, you're taking over, like you said, in this very eventful time where communication is at the forefront. But you also serve as the commanding officer of the NYPD Special Victims Division, which earns you the nickname BOB. What did that stand for?
Black Olivia Benson.
Black Olivia Benson from Law & Order SVU. So what is the most rewarding part overall of this new job for you?
Of this new job, the most rewarding part is really to communicate and connect with the community. Like I said, we hit the ground running. We've been out there. I've been to so many meetings and so many events and rallies and marches, and just really connecting with the community is what I really like to do. I took this job because I wanted to help people. So I feel like I'm really doing that, and that just excites me and energizes me.
I think it's a very interesting time for the police and the community, and it's a very unique time where communication, it will be the big factor moving forward. Hey, Assistant Chief Judy Harrison, really appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Enjoy your day. Thank you.
You too, and stay safe. 8:40.